Welcome back to Following Noah on a Stormlight podcast. This week is episode 171, and we are finishing The Well of Ascension by Brandon Sanderson. Paul, how are you?
Always great, especially great when we're finishing a book. So I'm just super excited about this. This and a recap later. It's always so fun going over the end of the book. It's just a huge sigh of relief.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe relief. Maybe there's a lot of unanswered questions, especially in some Sanderson books. But for the most part, it's a sigh of relief of like, wow, you really made it. You did it. We can kind of pat ourselves on the back and just be excited to talk about the whole book.
Yeah, our wrap-up episodes are some of my favorites as well. You kind of just dial it back and discuss the whole thing. Eliot, how are you?
I'm doing great. I've got a stack of Halloween candy that I dad taxed off my children, and I have this lovely book that arrived in the mail today
Nice.
that I am not opening yet because it's Secret Project 4. But just looking at the covers, man, impressive.
I listened to the audiobook. I have yet to flip through the physical book, but based on uh the audio descriptions that they give you of what's in the book, I'm excited to get my hands on mine because I think there's some really good art in there that I'm looking forward to seeing. But we don't get to cover that till next year on the podcast. So let's roll intro, and then we'll have Eliot do a brief summary of the final part of the Well of Ascension. All right, Eliot. Several different things happen in part 6, chapters 56 through the Epilogue. You want to run us through it?
Yeah, I'll do my best. I mean, this is as Sander Lanchy as it gets. So there's a lot packed in here. But we start off in chapter 56. Elend is on his way back to Luthadel. He's trying to catch up to Vin and the rest of the crew. He runs into a bunch of Terrace refugees and learns that their homeland has been attacked and devastated. But he tags along with the refugees all the way back to Luthadel. Gets back to the place. Vin is in a coma after all her pewter use and relying on that pretty heavily. But she does awaken, and then we jump kind of right into the thick of it with the mist attacking people. Vin feels this incredibly strong pull towards Friedrich Shaw. She follows that urge. She brings Ellen with her. They find the secret room inside of Krediksha. They go down into it. They find this cavern underneath with stores of food and a bunch of other strange things. And then, lo and behold, in one of the back caves is the Well of Ascension, and we get a pretty epic scene with what unfolds there. My takeaway: I'm still honestly a little bit confused by what all happened there, but Vin receives the power of the well, and she gives up that power. She gives it away, which in the moment seemed like the right thing to do. And then lo and behold, we find that maybe that was the wrong thing to do because apparently she's given that power to something, and that something has been set free and released into the world. Elend almost dies, but Vin saves him. And then, yeah, there's a lot in the epilogue with Sazed kind of dissecting what all has happened and having a few revelations that we'll talk about. But I think that's all the major events.
Yeah. I mean, there's several different things that we will be discussing there. Paul, I'm going to throw this to you. Does the fast pace Sanderland, let me preface the question. I think this is the fastest paced Sanderland we've had. And then there's zero time to process it. The book just ends. Like the last chapter of the book, Elend is dead on the floor or dying on the floor. Vin force feeds him metal, and then the book ends. And the epilogue comes in. Sazed walks in. It's like, oh, yep, the rubbing was wrong. And then Elend kind of wakes up and says, "Oh, I'm Mistborn now," and then the book ends. So, but my question is, do you enjoy so much packed into like 50 pages, or do you need some process time, like after these events, like in the book? I mean,
So in general, I love the action-packed 50 pages. I
right?
love those pages that are just like earth-shattering. Everything happens. I think that's great. However, I think it could have used a little more. Like personally, so this book, and we'll talk about this a little more in our recap. You know, it has a bit of middle book syndrome. The beginning is slower. The beginning to this book is slow. And so I'm like, is there any way this could have been more quantity of the total book, you know?
More well
Like maybe
balanced.
shortened maybe shortened some of the older stuff, like beginning stuff, and made this more than 50 pages, you know, or something like that. Added more maybe afterward, had this earlier in the book or something. I think that would have been good personally. Like I think there were adjustments to make. Like the blank question, do I like the packed 50 pages like at the end of the book? Yes, I do. I think it's awesome.
Right.
I absolutely love this part. However, I think for this particular part of this story, like this specific book, I think it would have been better to be a bit different, I guess. I did love it. As far as like what happens, it's awesome. It's super engaging. It's obviously really exciting. It's Brandon Sanderson, like it's gonna be pretty exciting. Um, and just what Eliot mentioned offhandedly as the you know, and what we talk about offhandedly as like, oh yeah, here's the chapter summary. Yeah. Elend almost dies. You know, like we get to the well. You know, powers released, but it's apparently it's a bad, like it's an evil spirit or something like that. You're like you don't even know, like the summaries of these chapters are crazy. So much happens
Right.
in such like a blink of an eye kind of moment. So it's wild. I'm excited for this opportunity to just kind of unpack all of that. Really.
What about for you, Elliot? Do you need uh, my question is phrased because I want the characters to sit down and process before the book ends. I want a chapter, maybe two, of Vin exiting with Elend, getting him the care he needs or the pewter he needs or whatever, and then telling Sazed, yo, well, this is what just happened, and then Sazed like can maybe process it for a little bit on page. We don't get any of that. Um, what about for you, Elliot? On a first read, how does this feel? So condensely packed.
I personally, for me, feel like it ended too abruptly. I would much prefer a time to digest what just happened. To see the characters do that, and for myself to do that. Elend is like basically dead on the floor. Vin brings him back, realizes he's burning pewter in about half a page. That's the end of the main body of the book.
Right.
And then you get 6 pages. 6 pages of epilogue of Seiza doing his thing, and then you're done. I would strongly prefer 20, 30 pages to kind of let it sink in for me. However, I think that's a preference. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know that I would say that that's a flaw in the book
Sure.
necessarily. For what it is, I think it works, especially in the more kind of fast-paced, lighter in the sense that it's not going as deeply into some of the topics, methods in Mistborn. I think it's fine the way it's written. I would just prefer more.
Sure. Did you see any of this coming? Besides approaching the well?
I, we'll have to talk about it as we go through it. The short answer to your question is no. I don't think I saw most of this coming. I do think, well, I take that back a bit of this. I predicted that Ellen was Mistborn from the beginning.
You did. You predicted that, like, wait, when we met him, you were
Yeah, I don't even
suspicious.
remember.
You were
Yeah,
suspicious of him more than a prediction. You're like, there's got to be something about this guy that's fishy, and
I'm
we just have to force feed him some strange metal that's by the well, and then he becomes Mistborn at the end of book 2.
I'm definitely going out on a limb to claim that one. I very early on predicted that he was a Mistborn. Turns out he wasn't, but hey, he becomes one at the end of book 2, so I'm
yeah.
claiming on to that.
I mean,
I
technically, your prediction, I guess, was correct. It depends on how you want to look at it. If you say, who's to say you're saying Miss Ellen is a Mistborn? Couldn't just be interpreted as, will be a Mistborn, at some
yeah,
point.
we'll go with that. Go with that.
Mm-hmm.
I do think that I was surprised by and did not predict that Vin would give up the power.
Okay.
I thought we were building into Vin kind of falling to the dark side a little bit and selfishly keeping the power. Or not even selfishly so much as feeling like she deserves to wield it or can wield it in the right way kind of thing. But I
What?
didn't expect the Ellen is dying. Now you have to make a decision between doing the right thing and saving Ellen.
Right.
And I like that she made the decision she did, but it did not play out in the way I would have guessed at all.
Right. And just from a personal note, I remembered that she gives up the power. I didn't remember why, like what the exact circumstances were, because I remembered that she wasn't supposed to, and I remember that she does, but I didn't remember the specifics. So something that's turned on its head right on the last 20 pages of the book is, turns out she's supposed to take the power and keep whatever is trapped in the Well of Ascension, like, there is what the actual metal engraving says. You need to not let whatever's in the Well of Ascension out. And one of the last lines of the second to last chapter, when she lets the power go, there's this creepy voice that says, "I am free." Shout out to Michael Kramer, because he gives one of the best performances ever in that. It is so creepy and so great. Um, but yeah, I didn't remember the specifics. So going through this, I really did enjoy um refreshing myself on what exactly happens here. Eliot, I saw you gave a funny face. Are you fuzzy on any of the details there? Are you still not convinced that she was supposed to take it or give it up or whatever?
I'm 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 pretty fuzzy on a few parts of it.
Okay.
I'll reconstruct most of what I think happened or maybe should have happened, and then maybe we can get into discussion on where I'm a little confused. Power exists in the well, apparently, along with some kind of being that is trapped in there. Vin takes power into herself. She then is supposed to it's very led into that the correct decision is to not be selfish and to give up the power,
Right.
which is that decision is made hard for her because Ellen is lying on the floor dying, and
Right.
she knows that with this power I can save him. Where I'm confused, which I'll circle back to in a second, is why Ellen is dying on the floor and the mist being that caused that to happen. I'll come back to that in a second.
Hmm.
So Ellen Vin Vin gives up the power, makes the air quotes right decision. She's not selfish. She makes a decision that she thinks is going to lead to Ellen dying, but she is saving the world by giving up this power.
Right.
Then all that gets flipped on its head in the epilogue because and kind of leading into the end of it there with what you're just talking about of I am free. She gives up the power, but then apparently she like gave the power to the thing that
Mm-hmm.
is free, perhaps, or she unlocked it and the thing is free. And then Sazed discovers that it's all been a lie, that something has been manipulating the entire religion, texts, stories, legends, even the memories he has in his metal
Even
mines.
metal mines. Yep.
Yeah. To over thousands of years, apparently, 1,000 years, to lead up to this one incident where it's all to trick the hero of ages into thinking she has to give up the power.
Right.
And so then the question is like, well, hang on a second, should she have kept the power? Which then leads into a whole bunch of discussion of like, well, the Lord Ruler, did the Lord
Yeah.
Ruler keep the power?
Yeah.
Was that the right decision? Did the Lord Ruler actually do the right thing? Well, we can talk more about that. I think I follow all of that. Ellen becomes Mistborn. Okay, this power is now free. Uh-oh. There's our plot for book 3. Where I'm super confused. The mist. The mist being.
Mm-hmm.
What the heck is going on there?
What
I
did go
don't I
on
don't
there?
understand the action. Well, okay. So the mist being appears at the Well of Ascension.
Yep.
Or I should say a mist being appears at
Yes.
the Well of Ascension.
Okay.
Slices Elend, like takes him out, apparently for the purpose of creating the dilemma that Vin now has to face of, hey, I'm gonna try to get you to keep the power.
Right.
Seems like where that's going.
Huh?
Which in the moment felt extremely evil. It was, well, hang on a second, that misbeing is clearly an antagonist, trying to get Vin to make the wrong decision and caring about sacrificing Ellen along the way. Which that seemed very at odds with the motivations and actions of the misbeing elsewhere, which almost seemed like the misbeing was helping in other scenarios. It's like trying to get Sazed to go stop Vin. It's helps, I guess. Oh yeah, the other part is so after Vin gives up the power, the misbeing is who helps Vin save Ellen. But then later, you realize, oh wait, Vin's decision was flipped from what you thought it was, and so is it the misbeing was helping all along, and by almost killing Ellen, it was actually helping and trying to get Vin to do the right thing because what she thought was the right thing was actually the wrong thing. And so the evil misbeing was actually the good misbeing and trying to kill Ellen to help Vin.
Are you?
I'm confused.
So
Go ahead,
I'm
Paul.
I'm gonna hop in here. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So what will really help you not confuse this so much is just don't think about it. Okay. What I mean by that is what I mean by that is so okay. Taking a couple steps back chronologically, I love how this was displayed because we as the reader were like, oh my gosh, that's going to be the dilemma, right? Vin is going to get this power, and it does a good job of showing how her like view, her understanding like expands like beyond her like understanding for a reason, like expands. She can see everything. She knows she could help all these people and stuff, right? She knows she could destroy things.
Can I jump in there real quick?
Yes, go right ahead.
One of the lines in there says that that the world was only hospitable at the poles, and she could fix that. And that made me think, okay, hold on, wait a minute. Does that mean there's another like whole group of people on the other side of the pole that we just have never talked to or interacted with? Are we half the planet here instead of like the whole? Like, do you understand what I'm saying? Does the Final Empire only cover like
Yeah,
half the planet, and there's people on the other half that we've never seen?
great question. Very well could be from that, honestly. Um, but okay, so Vin has this power in her hands, right? And her understanding is that she's supposed to not take this power,
Right.
which in and of itself sounds a bit like difficult to me. I'm like, what do you do? Like, I don't know. I've never inherited this much power, so I don't know how you get it or lose it, you know. But anyways, aside from that, she's supposed to let it go. And so, like, us as the reader, like, especially reading this for the first time, you're like, yeah, like, you know, that's going to be a huge dilemma. It's like Frodo holding the ring over or something like that, you know.
Right.
Except different, you know. But anyways, it's like that you have that natural inclination of like that natural greed, natural desire, like I can use this for good, but your understanding going into it is that you have to not take it for the betterment of all humanity, even though you can't see it right now. And what's really good about that is that it was wrong.
Mm.
Because like I don't know. I've never seen anything like that. Usually that is the dilemma in and of itself. It's the Wraith showing up to, you know, fatally wound Ellen so that she does take the power, you know. That's like the end of it. But the fact that it was all actually just like a fabrication, like whoever was pulling these strings, right? They knew that they would make the right choice, the quote unquote right correct choice, like the right choice of letting the power go,
Right.
and then to find out that that was wrong.
Yeah.
Which is so devastating. It's literally like losing on both fronts, you know, which is just like ridiculous. So like that on its own, like huge props just to the writing of that, just like the you know, there's a lot of trickery going on. As far as making it make sense, oh, excuse me. The Mist Wraith is definitely the hardest part. Like, is it a good guy? Is it simply just a fabrication of this, like, you know, whoever's pulling the strings here to like reinforce, right?
Can
Like a final boss kind of thing. Like, yeah, obviously there's going to be obstacles, and in order to win this for all of mankind, like we've got to let this go.
I ask Elliot a
Add some more
question?
legitimacy to it.
Can I ask Elliot a question on the
Yeah.
mist spirit?
Absolutely not. No, I'm not. I'm kidding. Go ahead.
Are there one or two mist spirits, Elliot?
I think there's at least two,
Why?
and I'm not. I can't point. I'd have to go back and reread it to like point to a specific section, but it feels like we've got different motives going on. I'm I'm not sure all the actions of the Mist Wraith line up exactly, and so it seems like for me there's at least there's more than one going on here. I'm not quite sure why. There's also, to take your question a different direction, there's also just like the mist in general,
Right.
which starts killing people, the deepness, if you will.
Yeah.
Up until these final pages, I at least was equating the mist, the deepness, and the mist figure together.
Sure.
I want to divorce those now because it seems like mist person is helping our heroes? Question mark. But the mist itself, which I kind of want to keep in the deepness side of my Venn diagram,
Hmm.
does not seem to be helping in any way. It's just angry or doing its thing or whatever and out killing people and driving them crazy. That no longer seems to line up with mist person. So
Right.
I think there's more than one mist person. I think the deepness is different, and the force of nature, perhaps, that is consuming and killing people is not necessarily the same as these beings that also seem misty.
Sure. And just a little factoid to throw in the air to support you one way or the other. There's a mist being with Sazed guiding him to
Yeah.
Vin. At the same time, there is a mist being with Vin and Ellen. It's the previous
And the mist,
chapter, but the rumblings that Sazed feels when he's fighting Marsh is an indication that there are simultaneous events happening of the next chapter, which also a mist wraith or I always want to say mist wraith. A mist, not wraith,
Mist
is
thing, mist being, yeah.
is also present at the well at the same time. So yeah,
If I recall as well, the one that's with Sazed can't go in the building.
correct.
Kind of like how the mist can't go into certain buildings except in strange specific exceptions. The and so that also kind of played into seems like there's different, but then of course question arises, why can the one be inside the cave with Vin at the well?
Right.
So lots of questions remain, but enough hints for me to say that we're dealing with a group of beings.
Okay.
I want to. Okay, one other thing that I want to say was even though, like, I guess you could say the mist beings' attempts failed, because if it is if that is what the mist thing is wanting, then Ven still gives up the power, right? But there is still like some success in that. Like, I don't think if Ellen hadn't faced that wound, we probably wouldn't have become a Mistborn, right?
Sure.
I don't know if that would have happened. So there's a bit of a silver lining. Also, something that's just popped into my head. I honestly didn't think about this at all on my first read through, but just throwing it out there. A little like ridiculous prediction theory time. Is this Mist being something or someone that we would know? Is it possible?
Is it possible? Yes. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know what you're asking though.
I'm like, Kelsier died in the first book.
Uh-huh.
Is this Kelsier as a cognitive shadow or something?
Uh, okay, but we saw the mist spirit in the book, the diary, the Lord Ruler diary.
Okay, good point. I
But
didn't remember
sure.
that.
But we're also talking, like we just said, about multiple beings. And
Right.
so we've got another class of beings that are apparently guided by voices they hear through spikes in their bodies. We'll get to that. What's to say there's not another class of beings that have died, become cognitive shadows, and are now being instructed by some other voice or the same voice? And so they might be acting similar across the ages because that's what they do. Could it be Helsier's spirit or something like that? I think that's very much in the realm of possibility.
Yeah,
Do
Doesn't that
I
exact thing happen on
could
Threnody? Don't people
could also be Zane's spirit, and this
right?
is a pure act of maliciousness of he's mad at Ellen,
Okay.
right? Could
Okay.
be that.
On Threnody, don't people die and turn into those shades? Is that what am I remembering that right?
I don't remember the details, but it sounds vaguely familiar. Yeah, I never remember the shades. I don't remember if people like directly turn into them or not. I think they do. I think they
I
do.
think they do. Yeah, okay.
Sorry, can you
Um
remind me? Was Threnody like the Forests of Silence?
yeah, Shadows for Silence in the Force
Okay.
Hell.
Yeah, I don't remember honestly.
When they use those like silver crossbolts to shoot
Yeah.
shades in the head.
Yeah,
Let's talk about Marsh. What the heck is happening with Marsh?
actually, exactly what I was wanting to talk about. So that's like was really the start. Like whenever we started reading this part 6, this is kind of what I believe. This is like that first chapter, right, where you hop in and you get. Maybe it's not the first chapter
It's
of part 6, but either way, it's near the beginning, I think, of Sazed and Marsh.
the first
Am
chapter.
I way out?
The first chapter of part 2 of this book is Sazed and Marsh exploring the keep and getting the rubbing. That's the first chapter of part 2 of this book. Is that what you're talking about?
I thought it was this. Maybe it's so. I started reading. I did all my reading like right after we finished our last episode because I couldn't wait. So maybe I'm off, but I thought that it was like part 6 starts with Sazed finding Marsh
Oh, no.
here.
So the first chapter of part 6 is Elend returning to Luthadel. The
Okay.
big long chapter, chapter 58, is when Sazed and Marsh are punching each other.
Okay. So never mind that. Forget I said that. Sazed and Marsh. So this is just wild because as the reader, like I thought this was the moment that like Sazed was going to die. I thought you think it's gonna be like a tragic, Marsh kills Sazed. Like that's logically I'm thinking like what should have happened. He's a terraceman who's, resourceful and had a lot of powers saved up, which is interesting. I'm curious to get y'all's thoughts on like the different things, like it growing in your weight, like your physical weight, was kind of crazy. I mean, we've seen it before, but like really, all of the stops were pulled out for this fight.
Yeah.
For Sazed to live, it was interesting. Also, Sazed, I think this is the first time we see it. Sazed talks about the weakness of an Inquisitor.
The pulling out the spike. This is the first time we've talked about it in this book for
Mhm.
sure. I mean, that was a big
Yeah.
reveal at the end of last book, but we haven't talked about it since.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's just something I wanted to acknowledge from last week. Eliot, you said that you'd be very upset if Sazed didn't make it to the end of the book, and you wanted to see him live on to next book and see how he proceeds, and you almost didn't get it.
I was prepping the rant. I was, as the scene was unfolding, I was getting angry. I was going, no, he is gonna die right now, and I'm gonna have to come on this podcast and absolutely light Brandon up for killing off a character right after setting him up for a really intriguing character arc. I was gonna be furious. I'm so relieved that Sazed survived that, because probably my biggest takeaway from this whole book is Zayz's journey, and he is by far the character I'm most interested about going into book 3, by far. And I would have been really upset if he had died there. It would have been epic, but I would have been upset. Thankfully, I don't have to be upset.
You want to recap the scene for us, Eliot? What exactly happened between Marsh and Sazed?
Yeah, I can try to step through what I remember here. Sazed is trying to get to Vin at the suggestion of the Mist being who's apparently helping us. Gets to Kredikshaw. Marsh is there. And Marsh is there specifically to stop Sazed, and drops a lot of intriguing lines.
Yeah.
Things like, everything has been going perfectly. I'm not going to let you ruin this. Like, read into that. And then other lines like, I wish I understood why I have to kill you.
Yeah.
Or there's other version of that that's like, I have to. I'm sorry. I just have to. And clearly, Marsh is not the same Marsh that we saw last book.
You're right.
And it's been a year, so things change. Marsh is no longer in the good guy category.
I mean,
Like, at the beginning of this book, I was ready to say, okay, he's gotten creepy. Maybe he's negative influence from becoming an Inquisitor and all, but still a good guy, right? Wrong.
there's two lines that firmly put him in the bad guy category in this scene. One is Sazed saying, I didn't know becoming an Inquisitor led you to betray or force you to betray your friends. Two, Sazed says, oh, I may not be a warrior, but you aren't a warrior either. And Marsh's reply to that is, I wasn't a warrior, but over the last 2 years, I have killed so many people. And that's all he says. You're like, okay. Marsh is gone. Like, he's gone.
Which is a big reveal for me, and slightly a little emotional. End of book 1, Marsh was in the conversation, not top of the list, but in the conversation for like favorite character.
Right.
He was, top 5 probably of characters that I liked in book 1. So to see him go so far is a small gut punch, a gut tap.
Yeah. And I think the reveal that Zane has a spike in him is leading up to this scene of why Marsh may
Yes.
be the way he is. So, Eliot, do you want to compare those two and relate those
I
on what I'm referring to here?
I do, because I went down that logic path myself, strictly based on the quote that I mentioned a second ago. I wish I understood why I have to kill you.
Yeah,
Add that up with the rest of that scene. I've killed hundreds of people. You're messing up the plan. I have to fix this. Clearly, there's some kind of influence on Marsh.
right.
Clearly. And I'm very ready to jump to the conclusion that Zane heard voices that specifically said kill. Like, that's the verbiage, is kill them, kill him, kill that. Very easy to assume that that's why Marsh has killed so many people.
Right.
He's had a voice in his head ever since he started this. I'd be really curious to go back to book 1 and revisit some of those Inquisitor Marsh scenes and see if he ever drops any kind of hint of, like, I'm hearing voices or something like that.
Mm,
Because easy to jump to, that's what's happened. Why I wish I understood why I have to kill you. He's following a directive he doesn't understand or maybe even agree with, but he's following it anyway. A voice in his head that just says kill makes perfect sense. So now we have, I think, a lot of evidence directly linking, you got a spike in you, you're hearing voices.
which I also want to equate that the other half of this scene. Did you catch this? Where Marsh is fighting Sazed, pulls his bag of copper mines or whatever, the gold rings and all that fun stuff, shoots them into Sazed, and then what?
He
Are you just getting into the
he
whole?
yeah.
Go ahead, Paul.
Like from inside of him he uses their power, which is like crazy
But
and a bit gruesome, you
but
know.
before that happens, what happens? Sazed hears a voice telling him to use that power. Those weren't coins that he shot into you. Did we find another deviation? No way.
No, I remember this.
No,
I do remember
I
this.
believe
I'm-
you heard it, Paul. I don't believe
okay.
Eliot's new version heard this.
The what you're saying does not ring a bell. Now, this is Sanderlanche territory, so a lot of things happen all at once. It is very possible I missed this, but
Uh,
I
Trevor
didn't
really wants this
I
to be
didn't write
another
that down.
deviation, though.
If it's
Where is
another
this?
one, I'm gonna flip because this is a big one.
This, I was gonna say, this one seems more specifically important than the other two that we casually found. So I actually have faith that these are pretty similar, if not the same.
Okay. Chat or about a page into chapter 58 is what I'm referring to. I'll read it real quick. I failed, Sazed thought, though I know not at what. I can't even answer Marsh's question. I don't know why I came here. He felt himself dying. It was an odd experience. His mind was resigned, yet confused, yet frustrated, yet slowly having trouble. Those weren't coins, a voice seemed to whisper. The thought rattled in his dying mind. The bag Marsh shot at you. Those weren't coins. Those were rings, Sazed. 8 of them. You took out 2, eyesight and hearing. You left the other ones where they were, in the pouch, tucked into your sash. That's all in italics in my book.
I was going to ask you about the format. It's the same. It is
Okay.
the same.
Okay.
I was gonna ask you if there were, like, quotations around that in yours. Sounds like there's not.
There's not.
I I did not key into it. I leaned maybe perhaps too heavily on the seemed to whisper and the continuation of the italics, which seems to come from Sazed's own thoughts the paragraph before, where you started.
Sure.
Where you first started seems to clearly just be his own thoughts. And so I read it as a voice seemed to whisper as just a little bit metaphorical, and it's really just Sazed having a out of body experience and remembering that he's doing that. But you could absolutely read it the direction you're going, which is actual voice in his head
I
telling him, "Oh, by the way."
I read it as Sazed just got spikes shoved into him, and now he's hearing a voice. That's what I read.
Okay.
I did
Okay.
not read it that way, I'll be honest.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure I'm ready to jump to that conclusion. I follow the logic by all means.
Yeah.
Good. I definitely can't point to anything to disprove you. Like going, this is probably too nuanced. Simply going off the fact that there are not quotation marks around that
Sure.
makes me want to lean into it's just Sazed's own thoughts. Compared to like the Zane perspective that
Yeah,
we
I was
got.
about to go look.
In the Zane perspective, it's clearly another voice where it says like God said, and then in quotes the words that he's hearing.
You are right. I
But
remember it specifically that there are quote marks around that,
but
around
but
Zane's inner
maybe
dialogue there.
maybe that's not the right conclusion to jump to, and maybe that's just Zane's had that voice in his head for years, and so it's very much a voice in his head. Whereas this is the first time Sazed is experiencing that. Maybe it seems to be his own thoughts, and so it's presented to us a bit like that, so that it's yeah, maybe. I'm a firm maybe on that.
Okay. What else, gentlemen? I'll actually answer my own question. By the end of the book, Marsh is gone. Eliot, any predictions? Where'd he go and what's going to happen?
Well, I feel like I can't even guess because he's clearly acting under the direction of someone or something.
Okay.
So he went wherever the voice told him. Would be my guess.
Good answer.
If I had to be more specific, did he go to join back up with his other Inquisitor buddies? Perhaps.
Maybe. Which we didn't mention it. We had a reveal of what the Inquisitors have been up to. Like the rest of the Inquisitors, not Marsh. The rest of them have been attacking Terrace. And if I remember correctly, is it all of the Keepers are dead? Did they specifically attack the Keepers? And so like Sazed's the only one left? Am I right there?
That was my understanding, or at least like only one that we know of. Like
Right.
I thought it felt a little bit ambiguous of like there may be other keepers out there, but at least like I thought. Hold on, I think it said that like everyone who was in Terrace maybe had died.
All the
But like
Keepers in
that's like
Terrace?
how. Yeah, but like that's how like Tendril was on the scene because she wasn't in Terrace or something like that.
Right.
And there may be other keepers that were not in Terrace
Sure.
that are still alive. But yeah,
I,
this was crazy for me because Eliot had mentioned before, like we really haven't seen an Inquisitor in a while, and when are they going to show up? You know, and we learned that they've been doing a lot. It sounds like they've been busy. Um,
but further away than I anticipated. I think I predicted that Vin was gonna find the Well of Ascension in Luthadel and it be protected by Inquisitors.
Right.
Was my thought, which was kind of the case with Marsh, but he wasn't protecting it from Vin. He was trying to get Vin there and then stop others from stopping her. Turns out the rest of the Inquisitors are all the way up in Terrace, wiping out the keepers.
Yeah. I wonder if specifically the fact that Marsh is attacking Sazed, if that also has a byproduct benefit of wiping out another keeper of attacking Sazed specifically.
Oh, maybe.
Because he's not just trying to stop Sazed. He specifically says, I have to kill you. So
Yeah. Should we talk about metals briefly?
Yeah,
Because
mystery metal number B or whatever we found. How
Yeah,
many
number B.
how
yeah,
many unnamed metals do we have? Because we had several at the end of last book, but we found them. There's Duralumin is new in this book.
well, yeah. And I took the liberty because we finished the book and it's at the end of the book, so it's fair game of
Uh,
flipping into the Ars Arcanum,
yeah.
which actually seems to mention a few things that are not explicitly spelled out in the book, so it almost felt a little spoilery. It does list out our metals, but it's not really complete.
Wait a minute.
Whoever's writing that Ars Arcanum doesn't quite maybe have all the information, but yeah.
My book doesn't have an Ars Arcanum.
Oh, mine does.
That's odd.
And the audiobook doesn't have it as well. No, no, I found it. There is an Ars Arcanum in this book, but the audiobook does not have it. Right, Paul? The audiobook just ends, doesn't it?
Correct. The audiobook does just end.
Okay, Elliot, what's in here? What did you learn about your metals?
Well, so like you said, we've got some other metals aside from the ones we learned about in the first book. So we got malatium, which is mentioned like once in
Uh-huh.
the text. That help me get this correct. That's the 11th metal.
Yes,
That's the
that is what Vin burns to see Terraceman Lord Ruler guy at the end of the
yes,
last book.
yes, which is other people's past selves
Right.
that you get to see versus gold, which we already know is seeing into your own past. Duralumin is not on here, nor is aluminum,
How many
which we
are on
know
here?
about. It's not in like the list,
I see 12 on here.
but yeah. 12 on our list and the little fancy diagram wheel thing.
Right.
But then in the actual like text here, it does talk about aluminum, but not duralumin, strangely. So there's two others that we've got. And then where I was going to kind of go with the question here is there's some kind of metal involved with Elend.
Right.
They make a big deal of when when they walk into the room with the well, there's a pot, like the magic pot. I think of Legend of Zelda. I immediately want to smash the pot, see if there's a rupee. There's
Yes.
a
Yeah.
there's a pot that they draw attention to it. Like, oh, there's a pot and it's got like a little bit of metal on it. And then they move on and they go over to the well, they do their thing. Ellen's on the floor dying. Vin gives up the power. Oh no, Ellen's gonna die. And the mist person draws Vin's attention to the metal pot, and Vin puts it together that, oh, I need to take that metal and get Ellen to ingest it. I forget exactly what. Did she just jump to that conclusion that
She's
she's
a
like, oh, I just need to
she's about to swallow it herself, and the spirit's like, no, 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 don't do that, and like
Oh,
points at Ellen,
yeah,
and so then
yeah.
she force feeds it to Ellen with a metal vial that has like all the 8 basic metals of like pewter, iron, steel. Um,
Okay.
so
So that's a bit of information that I forgot that is helpful here because she force feeds him the metal
uh,
with, as you just said, a bunch of other metals in one of her liquefied vial things.
right,
And then the big reveal, the last sentence of the entire main part of the book is Vin uses her bronze to detect that Ellen is burning pewter
right, to heal
to heal
himself.
himself.
Yep.
But the question remains, is that pewter that she force fed him? Or was it something different? Was it a new
I
metal? And he's just burning pewter because Vin happened to also give him pewter at the same time.
I would go down that route. That mystery metal gave him Mistborn powers, and now he gets to burn pewter because he also happened to have pewter in that vial.
Yeah. It is an important difference that I am quite curious about. If do we have new metal and the power is it makes you a Mistborn? That almost seems a little bit odd to me.
Hmm.
That, oh, you want the power of Allomancy? Well, in order to do that, you have to Allomance. Like, how do you become an Allomancer? you ingest metal. Well, wait, that's what allomancers do. That I don't know. That seems backwards. I was waiting for something different that makes you an allomancer, and then you can ingest metals and do stuff.
Yeah, and the only way I could maybe see it different is if Vin somehow accidentally makes him a Mistborn before giving up the power. That's the only like of the well. Or maybe just being within the
Or
proximity of the well makes you a
yeah,
Mistborn. But that's the only way I could see Elend being a Mistborn without the metal that he swallowed making him so.
Or maybe it was the
or
mist being touching him.
Maybe.
I don't think it's that for the record, but throwing out
or
logical like could be's.
or maybe it's the combination of special metal and proximity to the well of you got to be here next to the power and ingest this metal and burn it, and that makes you a Mistborn, whereas just ingesting the metal anywhere isn't necessarily going to do it. Seems like a lot of possibilities that are all semi-related. Of Elend ingests metal, burns it, becomes Mistborn. I guess really the only question left is, was there a new metal involved there?
I have something I want to ask, but I can't do it without a Stormlight spoiler.
Ah,
Do we have anything else to talk about before we get into a Stormlight spoiler?
I was gonna say, what are our final thoughts here? I feel like maybe we should make.
Oh, we got to talk about the rubbing.
yeah.
Oh, you're right. Yes.
Okay, so back up to 2018, first time reading Mistborn for myself. This scene of Sazed going into the rubbing, the metal plaque room, and finding out that the rubbing is different is the first scene where I was really sold on Mistborn. That reveal completely worked for me, and it really hit that wow, that is so cool and so creepy, and I am so interested on how that happens and what is happening here. Did it work for you, Elliot? Did you see this coming?
Mm, not again, not specifically as it happened necessarily, but it felt like we were building to something like this. We had clues leading into this that wait, you wrote that down, but now it's changed, kind of things. So it this scene felt cinematic.
Yeah.
You could feel tension building. You could hear the like pensive music score slowly building to the revelation that wait, it's different. And you could I could see that as the curtain close scene
Right.
easily
Yeah.
in a movie
Post
of,
credit scene.
you know, oh sure, yeah, like, shocked look on Caesar's face as he comes to that revelation and oh crap, scene close.
Yeah. So, Elliot, I don't know if you had this was 3 episodes ago, I believe, where you said the epigraphs are boring. I have not found an interesting epigraph, and you're like, they are clearly the rubbing that Seiza took at the beginning of the book, and I've read that whole thing already. Why do I get it again? And I asked you, are they? And you're like, you gave me a weird look.
Yeah.
They are close. So there's a chapter where Tyndall and Sazed read out pretty much the entire rubbing that they've taken. And
Yeah.
at that point, it starts with, I pound these words into metal because I'm scared, or something like that. And then the actual plaque says, I carve these words in steel, for anything not set in metal cannot be trusted. And in that scene is the first time you could have picked up on, well, hold on, that's not what the plaque says.
Mm-hmm.
It's close, but it's not what it says. So I loved this reveal on my first time. This is something I remember vividly from Mistborn, so I was not surprised at all by this scene. So yeah, the epigraphs are what the actual plaque says. and the chapters, or the chapter where Tyndall and Sazed are reading it, is what they have on their rubbing, and they're different.
And I missed it completely. I was deceived, just like our characters. And I even had it in front of me in words. I could have easily flipped a few pages back and gone and checked it if I'd noticed, but I did not at all.
What are the implications of this? What's going on?
Now there's the real question, and definitely the intriguing part of this. What is going on here? So obviously something that did not need to be freed from a well of ascension, I want to point out,
Yes.
it is out in the world affecting things. So different from whatever Vin just released. Something with pretty clearly magical powers of some kind is very intentionally, very subtly, very specifically manipulating stuff, words, memories
Metal mines.
to achieve an end. Yeah, the metal mines is fascinating and clearly rather disturbing for Sazed, right?
Right.
His entire life is built around the knowledge that he's stored up in these metal mines. And you can tell in this scene, it kind of breaks him a little bit to realize, oh crap, I can't even trust my own vast store of knowledge in my metal mines because something can alter it.
Yeah, and he's spent this entire book with Tyndall studying and trying to figure out what exactly happened with the Well of Ascension, what is going on. All of it could be fake. All of it.
Yep. Yep. So something is out there, something rather powerful, although in again, I said it's intriguing and it really is. It seems like this type of being has to have some kind of a magical power to affect metal mines, to change words in text, on paper, that sort of thing. But yet it's got that level of power, but yet doesn't have power to directly influence events.
Right.
Like this whole thing, the whole changing of words and whatever was apparently a hundreds of years long, maybe thousands of years long ploy to get someone to follow the religious direction and free the thing in the well. If whatever being this is had actual power, they'd just go free the thing in the well or mind control someone to go free the thing in the well or make more direct
Or go free the thing in the
impact
well.
on
Right.
the world.
Do it
Yeah.
themselves.
Like right, exactly. So this thing has scary amounts of reach, but I would venture to imply maybe a actually rather limited amount of power or maybe a very specific kind of
It
power
it's clearly
such that they have to
shackled
spend
somehow.
perhaps perhaps yeah it it very much changes. I'm rambling too much here, so you have to cut me off here in a minute so we can talk about Stormlight stuff. The it very much twists the entire theme and framework of this book and even the first book
Mm.
because as we talked, religion is a huge part of this world. Religion is used to do a lot of things. Dazed has many conversations about religions in general, even the concept of religions and faith. Talked about faith and hope and a lot of these things that are tied to like spirituality. This moment where you realize that an entire religion, maybe more than one religion, were specifically used and rewritten to achieve one specific goal. Sazed has this realization and it breaks him. This whole thing is fake. Well, if this whole thing is fake, like, is all of this fake? It completely shatters so much of the structure, so much of the setting and framework of these books that we've seen so far. I don't even know what to think of it.
The implications for Sazed are what I'm looking forward to at the beginning of the Hero of Ages. I don't remember the first half of the Hero of Ages. I remember the second half of the Hero of Ages quite well. But the first half, I don't remember how Sazed deals with this in the first half of the book. So that is actually what I'm looking forward to most, on how Sazed moves forward with dealing with because he's devoted his life to passing on these religions for the sake of keeping the heritage alive.
Yeah.
And if the entire
Yeah.
heritage is just a fabrication to manipulate me, why should I be passing this along? Like, that is a big question that we've just been posed in the last three paragraphs of this book. Like, how do you deal with that as Sazed? And if he's the only keeper left, like, do you with what you have, what is real and what is not, and what do you pass on? Like, fascinating.
Even if you take the manipulation and deception part of it out, which is a huge problem, like you just said, even just the fact that it's changed, that's a major problem for a historian
Right.
whose entire job is to find the accurate and true history and preserve it, using that word specifically. Preserve that
Yes.
history in the way that it should be, and not letting things contaminate that history, or not letting history get rewritten by specific people. He can't even trust anything that he's got. The religions that he's passing along, the history, all of it, any part of it could be just completely fabricated and incorrect. And so, like you just said, his entire life purpose, the life purpose of generations of keepers, could be completely for nothing.
You want to add anything, Paul, before we go to Stormlight spoilers?
Personally, I'm ready and excited for Stormlight spoilers time.
Okay. Let's jump into it then. I have a question for you guys. Full Stormlight spoilers, full other Cosmere spoilers as well. Is the Well of Ascension a perpendicularity?
Very
It's the Well
possibly.
of Ascension of perpendicularity.
Because
I think so.
If it is, that could easily explain how you get Mistborn powers. Easily explain. And if it's tying you directly to Shadesmar by being in proximity, I wonder if that's how Ellen gets his powers. If you just show up and then you're a Mistborn by being within, 100 meters of the perpendicularity or whatever. I think it is, simply because perpendicularity ties what? The physical, spiritual, and the... What is Shadesmar called? Cognitive. Thank you. So, in order to get Ascension powers, which we'll talk about here in a second, of what exactly Finn has in her hands, I think it has to be a perpendicularity, because if we're going by like Oathbringer definition of perpendicularity, when Dalinar pulls all three together at the end of Oathbringer, I think she's tapping into the spiritual realm. Right?
That's what I was going to say.
So I think it is. Paul, you think it is?
I'm struggling. Honestly, I'm struggling a little bit with how the perpendicularity can give any powers.
Sure.
Maybe I'm missing something big, but I'm kind of like struggling with that element of it. I'm like, can see how it's a perpendicularity here. I can especially see how you could compare it to a perpendicularity if there's a chance that this mist being is someone we know by chance.
Okay.
Not necessarily that it's someone we know, but someone that we could know, like someone who was on this planet and died, or something like that.
Sure.
It doesn't have to be like, oh, it's Kelsier, but it's someone.
And let's also acknowledge, assuming there's no perpendicularity by name in Elantris, this would predate that term. So I just want to acknowledge that we've never seen that term if we were going to read in chronological order.
I do think spiritual realm feels very likely and relevant to like the themes that we were just talking about in the whole religion aspect of of Scadrial.
Yeah.
The fact that the spiritual realm would play a part in this world more than elsewhere, like sure, that seems to fit very well. And is the Well of Ascension a opening of the spiritual realm such that proximity to it or stepping into it gives you direct access to the spiritual realm and all of that investiture that's there? And does that make you a Mistborn? Like, that makes total sense. The part that I'm a little hung up on is how all of that works with some being trapped in it.
Sure.
That doesn't quite compute with what I know of perpendicularities. It seems like a perpendicularity like this, where it's just there. It's not a Dalinar perpendicularity where he has to open it. It's a um, up in the mountains,
Horneater Peaks.
Horneater. Yeah, there we go. Horneater Peaks perpendicularity where it's just sitting there. That I would assume is something that people can just like go through at will, and it's a free for all. So the fact that it seems to be containing somebody doesn't seem to make sense.
I just had a crazy Stormlight theory pop into my brain when you looked at your map there.
Do it.
Can I pause the Mistborn stuff for a second? What if Honor's perpendicularity was on the Shattered Plains and it was destroyed? Or when Honor died, it destroyed itself? Because what Dalinar is summoning is Honor's perpendicularity, but the fact that it's no longer on Roshar, then it made me think, okay, where was it? Shattered Plains.
I like that. I like that a lot.
I'm trying to think of something wrong with it.
Sure.
Like I'm not sold on it, but I'm struggling to disprove it, you know?
And was maybe creation of that perpendicularity the event when humans came over from the other planet to Roshar, and that's when it got created. And
Okay.
then when Honor dies, it destroys itself, shattering the planes all around it.
Okay, counterpoint. They don't come over with Honor. They come over with Odium.
Right.
So now I'm wondering if Honor's perpendicularity is in the Shattered Plains, and if Odium's is in Shinovar. Because that's where they come over, is Shinovar. So now I'm wondering if we have an Odium perpendicularity in Shinovar that we haven't found yet, and we're going to find in Book 5.
We better keep an eye out for pools of water.
There's a puddle!
Yeah.
Okay, side note, I don't know how Cultivation didn't pick the Pure Lake as her perpendicularity. It's right there. It's awesome. Why are you
Right.
not picking the Pure Lake? There is something weird going on with Pure Lake, but we don't know what it is. There's like magical fish or something. Anyway, back to the Well of Ascension. Yeah. So if which perpendicularity is it, if it is one? Ruin or preservation?
This is
Or
going to
both?
tie into another discussion that I wanted to have. I am doing exactly that now, of trying to equate certain things to one or the other of our known shards on Scadrial. Whose perpendicularity would this be? Preservation, right? Maybe that. Well,
Well, if you want to I'll make that assumption and I'll run with it, because the Lord Ruler, you could assume, has the powers of preservation when
oh yeah.
when he pulls the power for himself, and
Well,
then
okay. So here, let me read my quote, because that's exactly what I was going to key into,
okay,
but I didn't have it up in front of me. Page 752. Yeah, let me read you a section, because I was going to lead into pretty much exactly what you just said. Okay. What is the context here? Vin and Sazed are having a discussion.
okay, like when she's about
This
to
is
go
in
to the well.
chapter. Correct. Correct. They're having a conversation right before she takes off to go to the well. This is in chapter 57. And Vin's like having all these revelations as she realizes, oh, I've got to go to the well. I know where it is. It's where they realize that the well is not in Terrace. Sazed says, the well of Ascension was found in the Terrace Mountains. Vin shook her head. He changed the world, Sazed. He frowned. What? The Lord Ruler, she whispered. He created the Ash Mounts. The records say he made the vast deserts around the Empire, that he broke the land in order to preserve it.
Preserve it.
That
It says preserve.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. That's the sentence I wanted to key in on. He broke the land in order to preserve it, which strangely enough seems to have elements of both shards,
Right.
ruin and preservation. Broke the land to preserve it. But I think overall, I equate the actions of the Lord Ruler and the motivations very much with a preservation taken in a rather negative way.
Sure.
I'm going to preserve my own power. I'm going to make myself everlasting, all that kind of thing. But I definitely lean preservation, I think.
So where's ruin?
Well, that's what just got freed, probably, right?
Why would he be in
Was preservation preserving? So everything in this just seems like preservation to me. I think the question "where is ruin" is a really good question, but like, I don't know. It doesn't. I don't know. Maybe ruin is somewhere else. It's like so. The reason why I instantly would say I think this is preservation is because we see the power. Vin holds it, and she's like, "There's so much good that I could do right now," which.
Right.
I'm going off of my understanding and intuition and saying that's sounds like preservation. That doesn't sound like ruin to me. That power to like do good or to restore or to preserve the earth or right.
Right.
I don't know. Do we understand what preservation and ruin's like relationship to each other is? Like we kind of understand that in Stormlight, kind of what the dynamic is with like odium and honor and cultivation. Here, I don't know if we know how they're connected, if we know how ruin and preservation are connected.
I mean, as far as we know, we haven't talked to either one. Right?
Mm-hmm. That's true.
I definitely don't feel like we have much to go off of. I will say, though, Scadril as a whole, or Trevor, as you alluded to before, maybe the half of Scadril that we've seen yet.
Yeah.
But anyway, Scadril, I mean, that could bring up whole other questions, but Scadril as a whole seems like a place that is in a state of ruin, yet preserved that way. It it so it could
I like
be. It
that.
seems like a place that has been ruined, but is being preserved. It's not getting worse, but it's not getting better. But the ash mounts are kind of the great example of it's kind of been ruined. It's got a dark sky, ash falls, the sun is red. Like there's problems here. It's almost like ruin was running the town for quite a while. Preservation finally got control and was like, I'm putting a stop to this. But it's preservation. It didn't make it any better. It just put a stop to it all. Preservation somehow like contained ruin, stopped ruin, and said, okay, I'm preserving this. And that's kind of the state that we've been at through all this is maybe ruin's been suppressed or contained and preservation is running the show at this point. I very much fear that Vin might have just changed that.
Is either ruin or preservation the deepness?
So we know that, okay, our understanding, until we find out it's wrong, isn't it that it's to let go of the power at the Will of Ascension so that that power can defeat the darkness? Was that right? Is that what we were told?
That was the prophecy that you need to release the power so that it can defeat the deepness.
That's fake.
So
It's all fake.
But that's fake.
Yes, that is all fake. That is all fake. What that naturally leads me to believe, right, is this whole like, okay, preservation is the power at the Well of Ascension, and the ruin is the deepness, or at least part of ruin has something to do with the deepness, right? So that's what it makes me think. But we know that's wrong. So
You're losing me. I'm getting confused.
yeah, well, like, okay. Logically, I'm assuming preservation is a good guy, ruin is a bad guy.
Okay.
That's
Fine.
what I'm
Fine
that's what I'm
assumption.
generally assuming just based off of their names and attributes, right? So I'm saying what our characters were told is that release the power at the Well of Ascension and it will defeat the deepness. So I'm kind of extrapolating that to this is preservation at the well, which we need to release to defeat the deepness, which may not be ruin itself, but like something that's a part of ruin, right? Um, but so that's the assumption. But then you find out that that's wrong. That this, at least letting the power go, is not the right thing. So I don't know if that's actually ruin, or maybe preservation isn't a good guy, kind of
So,
thing, or what.
so circling back to
But
something that Eliot said way at the beginning of the episode, did the Lord Ruler do the right thing by taking the power? So if it's flipped, like you're
Well,
saying, do you have to take the power in the well, which would be preservation, to defeat ruin? Because Elliot, what you just said is, I think we just let ruin free. Is what Elliot you just said.
maybe. I'm almost getting to the point where I think both decisions are wrong. The right decision is not going to the well at all
Okay.
because the if you release the power and apparently give it to whatever thing you just freed, it seems like that was incorrect. But I think the Lord Ruler has proven that keeping the power wasn't good either.
Right.
Or or maybe that was the right decision and just over time power corrupts.
Sure.
And the Lord Ruler did the correct thing, took the power, protected the world, but then over time became corrupted by that power and then abused it. And so maybe the correct answer is take the power, but then
But
don't use it,
has to be a good
or
person or something like that.
like a perfectly good person.
Right.
Because if they're going to become eternal, they got eternity to fall to corruption. And
Sure.
power corrupts is a cliche, but it's a very true cliche, as history has proven, is people, no matter how good their intentions, in positions of absolute power, tend to eventually do bad things with it.
Remember what the Lord Ruler's last words were?
No.
You don't know what you've done. You don't know what I do for mankind.
Yeah. Hold back ruin?
Maybe. Hold back, hold preservation and hold back ruin, maybe?
Maybe. I I am with what you were kind of talking about for a bit there, Paul, though. I do I do equate the deepness with ruin in my mind.
Okay.
Those seem
okay,
to align. We see a lot of preservation. We see a lot of references to preserving, eternity, maintaining. Those things seem to fit. The deepness does not fit with any of that. The deepness seems to be a destructive power, a something that is just trying to kill or destroy. Sounds ruiny.
Did you key into the mists? What were they were doing to Vin before she enters Creedic Shaw? So at the
Swirling?
yeah, so at the end of the final empire, she draws upon the mists to defeat the Lord Ruler. Right?
Oh,
Right?
yeah, I see where you're going.
At
I see
the
where you're
end
going.
of the Well of Ascension, she's
Yeah.
approaching the well, and Sazed says, "Do you see the mists?" And Vin says, "Yeah, they're acting weird." And Sazed says, "Yeah, they're pulling away from you."
Let's add more evidence to this. So Vin is in a death match battle with Zane.
Mm,
The mists are doing funky things there too.
yep.
Vin tries to draw on the mist to defeat Zane. The mist refuses. What if what if Zane is a disciple of Ruin, and now we can tie in our whole you've got spikes, you hear voices. Is that the voice of Ruin? with the whole kill mantra.
Yeah.
So the Ruin, the Mist then aligns with Ruin. The Mist helped Vin defeat the Lord Ruler because the Lord Ruler was acting under the guidance of preservation. So Ruin was like, yeah, I got to get out of that nasty person's clutches. So here's my power. But then later, I was like, nope, sorry, I'm not helping you kill Zane because he's my dude. And then later on is nudging, pushing, whatever, trying to get Vin to free something from the well.
Or is it the Mist is siding with preservation to overthrow the Lord Ruler because the Lord Ruler has twisted preservation's power and wants someone else?
Maybe.
I could see either one.
Still can't reconcile the deepness side of the Mist,
Right.
which again, we're kind of making a little bit of an assumption there. The destructive side of the Mist, that I can't quite reconcile with preservation.
Right.
Does the Mist sometimes, maybe, depending on how you look at it, act aligning with preservation? Maybe, but then I can't. That then has to be like a different Mist than the Mist that makes people go crazy and eat themselves or other people
Are
or
there two
whatever they
different
do.
Mists?
Oh, very possible. Back to the whole, are there two different Mist beings
Okay.
more than those? Like, do we got competing Mists going on here? Maybe.
Anything else, gentlemen?
Two Mists. That is a new one to me. I can't lie.
You never thought about it?
Cannot lie about that.
Yeah, the dark gray Mist and then the slightly less dark gray Mist.
Mm,
Yeah.
okay.
I mean, there's a Mist that's
Yeah.
attracted to Vin, and there's a Mist that repels from Vin.
I mean, we've got like 12 types of light on Roshar. So, I mean, if there's that many types of light, I guess there could
think-
be multiple types of mist.
I think we have
you know?
6, but yes.
That you know of.
Sure. In fact, well,
One,
knowing Sanderson, there's probably 10 because there's everything's 10 on there.
Yeah, fair.
you ready for me to knock your socks off?
I'm not wearing socks, but go ahead.
Yeah. I'm also not wearing socks, but I'm prepared.
There's a nickname that some of the folks use for Elend, and they use it a lot. At the end of this book, though, they're having a conversation, and I had an absolutely absurd thought enter my head. The nickname they use for Elend is L, and it's not just Vin. It's not like a pet name that Vin uses for Elend. There's other people that refer to him as L as well. It's clearly just like a shortened, nickname for him.
So is this a Stormlight? Like we're still in Stormlight spoiler? Yeah, okay. I see where you're going.
Huh? Oh, very, very Stormlight spoilery. There's another character in the Cosmere known as L that we see in Stormlight,
True.
and I can hardly even remember the details about this person, other than it's like end of Rhythm of War, right?
Yeah, he's in one scene at the end of Rhythm of War,
where a character comes in and appears to be a bit of a puppet master, like behind the scenes, controlling things, big baddie. His name is L, and he's in control of all of the fused, right?
Yeah. I believe he appears to be a fused himself.
Yeah. I couldn't recall if it was if he was a fused or not. Details there, but going all the way on spoilers. In the reveals that we get it's like epilogues of Rhythm of War and pre-release. Is it pre-release stuff for 5? I can't even remember now. The Lord of Scars makes an appearance.
That's pre-release for 5, yeah.
In Stormlight, in the pre-release for 5. I'm again completely impossible. No way this is related whatsoever. If Kelsier is on Roshar, could Elend be as well under his nickname L and is in control of all the fused? Absolutely ridiculous, but it's the same name, so obviously it must be true.
I am all for crazy theories, but this one I am not getting on board. You can go with that one yourself. I don't think that one's
So you're telling me you're telling me it's pure coincidence. Pure coincidence that the characters have the same name.
It's a Sanderson book. It can't... Man. Yes.
Now
Yes, I'm saying it's pure coincidence.
to be fair, I agree. I think it is coincidence. But I had the thought that you just had of, but it's Sanderson.
That's pretty funny.
Which is a very scary thought to run with, you know? You can really run down a lot of rabbit holes. I mean, on the bright side, that is how we got to our conclusion that Shalon is Lightsong.
That's
and
true.
I'm very grateful that we were able to make connections like this because it is Sanderson. So,
L is Elland. There
you
go.
know. Yeah.
Elland is L.
exactly. Yeah,
Ellen is L.
there we go. There we go.
There's
Solved.
an epigraph at the end of Rhythm of War that says, "Who then is L?" And there you go. We've solved it.
There we go. Also, to add to this, Eliot, whenever I first started reading Mistborn, like, was really like a couple chapters into the Final Empire, I would like they keep calling Kelsier like Kel or something like that.
Oh yeah.
You know, and Kaladin is Cal. So
Yeah.
I was like, I mean,
Yeah.
that's close, right? Is there a connection here? I was really digging into that, but you know, the name association is not the most reliable.
The two
Even
characters
are the most noticeable.
The two characters that have nothing to do with each other that I equate together, simply because Michael Kramer uses the same voice for both characters, is Wayne from Mistborn Era 2, which we'll get to in a couple months here, and Lopin from Bridge 4. Lopin and Wayne have the same voice from Michael Kramer, and so in my brain they're the same character. Okay, anything else, gentlemen?
I think that's plenty.
Next week, we will summarize and recap and wrap up the entire book of The Well of Ascension. And then the week after that, we'll be jumping straight into The Hero of Ages. Thanks for joining me. We reconvene next week. Paul and Eliot.
Bye-bye.